I would like to ask you one thing. What do you think love is? How does it intertwine with violence in relationships? And most importantly, how is it associated with us? In the short few years that I've been studying media, there's never been a subject that hits so close to home. My name is Joshua Alex, and come with me as I'll search for answers on why so many people have gone silent when speaking about domestic abuse. Throughout the course of the video, to find out why this is, I'll be interviewing the public, safeguarding tutors, students, as well as survivors to see what the problem is and what solution can we come up with to prevent this from happening in the future. So to start off with, I went to Brook Lane to interview a member of the public, and this is what she had to say.
In my perspective, domestic abuse is when someone is not being treated in the correct way within their social friends and their family. So any way they're being harmed, I would say.
Okay. Why do you think it happens within a marital household or in a relationship?
I would say it happens most in a relationship or in a marriage circumstances because it's easier, because you're like connected to the person you're in a relationship with. It's
like a mutual contract, but you're still binding together.
Exactly. So I feel like if you're in love with someone or you have feelings for them, no matter what feelings they are, I feel like sometimes you can be blinded how harmful they are being to you.
How manipulative
exactly. So it's like you don't even realize it, and by the time you do, you've already been like
subdued into that.
Exactly. Whether it's like physically or mentally.
It is said that throughout their lifetime, 25% of women in Western countries experience domestic abuse, which comes down to it receiving less attention than it should be, in which cases, many of them, which are associated with domestic abuse, go unreported. Today I've come into Newvic College to speak with a collective group of people on what they think triggers the repetitive pattern and what they think organizations as well as the police have to offer to give them a way out.
If somebody comes into college and they've got a black eye, that suggests something's happened to them, whether that's in the home or somewhere else, but it suggests something. But lots of them are much less obvious.
It can be subtle as well.
It can be subtle. Well, one of the first things we look at college, of course, is the most basic thing of all, attendance. If a young person's attendance starts to dip, we need to find out the reasons why. It could just be that they're just not coming into college, they're not enjoying the course or whatever it might be, but it could be there's something else going on. The other sorts of things you tend to notice with those other kinds of forms of abuse. So if you see a young person who's not been wearing different clothes for a long time, where they're not very clean, those can be those sorts of abuse that can tend to be more to do with neglect. And obviously we do get young people saying, I've not eaten. And again, that's something else that we need to keep an eye on. So that's why you've got to be very careful when you're looking at this sort of thing, that you don't miss any signs of abuse, and that you make sure that you're picking them up as quickly as you can, so that you can get support to that young person.
So earlier on today you mentioned you were a victim of domestic abuse in your household. How did you feel when that happened?
I was honestly scared, and like I didn't know that it could, potentially happen to me. Like it wasn't really like physical abuse, it was more verbal abuse.
So emotional?
Yeah.
Okay. So what do you think went wrong when in order to get to that position?
I don't know, to be honest. Like it just sort of happened.
Yeah. Was there anything you could have done to escape that situation if you had the chance?
I have told my mum countless of times that I will, call childline.
Yeah.
If anything, if he, raised his hand on me, actually started to hit me.
Oh,
But it never resulted into that, so it was fine.
okay. So in terms of, what do you think the outcome would have been if you did escape that torment and abuse, and how do you think that would have affected you differently?
If the roles were if it happened to me when I was little and not at the age I am now, then I probably would have been, with the foster family.
Yeah.
Social services would have been called and everything, and then I wouldn't be able to see my mum again, or the rest of my family again.
Do you think what do you think needs to change in the system for us to help people of domestic abuse or survivors?
I generally think they should, if they want to stay with the rest of their family, then if regardless of your age, you should be given a chance to have a say in what you want to do
Okay.
about it.
Yeah.
Whether you want to go to a foster family or you want to stay with your family, just not with the abuser.
Yeah.
When people were placed in lockdown on March 15th, 2020, as the result of the COVID-19 pandemic, the rules were imposed to us and implemented onto our daily lives that we did not leave the house. Some weren't so lucky, considering they had to face daily abuse from their significant partners for the duration of the months coming ahead.
In a relationship, you expect your other partner to be, loving you, happy and everything. But when it comes to someone who's abusing you or taking advantage of you in a way, it can be very heartbreaking for them. And I'll say seek for the right help needed. By that, speak to someone a professional therapist, anyone else. But at the same time, with the children, if they cannot go and speak to someone, I'll say just say it to teachers or anyone, because they'll be ready to help you at any time.
Between March and June of 2020, the police has received 106,492 offences in relation to domestic abuse, which has seen a 9% increase in 2019.
Years ago, domestic violence, between marital or within a relationship, was almost acceptable. It's if what happens in your house is not a police matter. But that's changed quite a lot, and I think it's changed quite a lot because so many children were witness to the domestic violence at home that then thought it was acceptable to go and perpetrate that in their own relationships. That there's been a big shift in the way we look at that in terms of safeguarding and young people growing up. I think the police now, their response to the calls for domestic violence has changed a lot, and they take it a lot more seriously. I think there's been a lot wider approach on domestic violence between where men are the victim as well. I think there's been a big change in that.
Like the Johnny Depp trial.
Yes, yeah. I think there's been a lot, and they take that a lot more seriously now.
Yeah.
I think they take more seriously now domestic violence between same-sex relationships as well, and other types between maybe siblings in the home and other things that are going on in the home. So I think overall, I think the whole thing's been taken a lot more seriously, and their approach is a lot more serious. I couldn't tell you about how many convictions and stuff they get for domestic violence. I don't know that side, in all honesty. But I think there's a lot more support for someone who's been a victim at that time to be taken out of that situation.
We know that throughout the past 3 years, the numbers of offences related to domestic abuse has risen compared to the previous years. We can take into account that the increase is because the victims are willing to come out and speak when looking at the people who are affected by the pandemic. what makes a family unit?
Well, a family unit would be a partner, whether it's a man and woman, or a man and man, or a woman and woman.
Okay.
And it is the relationship and dynamic between those two people.
Okay. So, in terms of how the police are treating those who are calling people for help in terms of domestic abuse, how do you think the police should handle it when being called?
Well, I'm not per se with what the police do exactly.
Okay.
I would have thought that they would, if a disturbance has happened, they would go to an address and they would knock on the door and they would try and assess the situation.
Okay.
Obviously that's happened, we have a bit more knowledge of that happening recently with the Johnny Depp case.
Yeah.
About the disagreements and what the police do. They go to a house and they assess the situation and they see if anyone is at risk. As far as I know, but I don't have that much experience of this.
So you mentioned that the Johnny Depp case for the trial. How do you think that's impacted those who are going through domestic abuse at this time, and do you think that will impact them?
I think it's highlighted the issue, certainly. I mean, a lot of people have been talking more about domestic abuse, so in actual fact, Johnny Depp and Amber, is it Amber? What's her
Amber
name?
Heard.
Amber Heard has actually highlighted an issue that happens quite a lot, and more people have been talking about it. So if we're going to be talking positively about everything that's happened, it can only have a
positive impact.
Yeah, but it has been a complete saga, really. It's just absolutely, the stuff that's coming out in that case is absolutely ridiculous, and to a certain extent I've completely lost interest in it. I find them both quite ridiculous. But on the positive side, everything has a positive. Positive is more people are talking about it. I think that's a good thing.
Putting it into the forefront.
Exactly.
According to the BBC, in the aftermath of the pandemic, there has been a massive increase in terms of appeals being made and making sure that it's a cry for help. Since over the past year, people have been suffering from domestic abuse and has actually experienced the problem.
Well, I think that domestic abuse is anything that happens within the home, within a domestic situation, but it doesn't have to be between partners or husband and wife. I think it can be between parents and children, between siblings, anything that happens within the domestic context.
So in your life, have you ever experienced any domestic abuse?
Yes, I have.
May I ask what happened, if that's okay?
I experienced a lot of physical and verbal abuse. I was made to feel subhuman. I was made to feel like I was not worth it, and I feel like I was put into a bracket where I felt that I had no option but to put up with the things that I had to go through, because I felt that that's all I was worth, and one person made me feel like that.
Do you think there could have been any way for you to get out of that situation if you had the chance?
I think it's not as easy to answer that question, because it sometimes feels like it's a trap. You feel like you want to escape. You somehow muster up the courage to try and get away. You talk to that person, and then all of a sudden they tell you that they're going to change everything's going to be different. In somewhere, somehow, you decide that maybe for the sake of the kids. Sometimes it's also cultural. I'm from an Indian background, and to put it bluntly, it feels like it's not just you in that relationship, it's the whole community. You've got people within your closest circle. They sometimes have so many opinions, and some of the opinions hurt. So you decide, rather than hearing those kind of things, it's better to try and stay and fix something that's already broken. You know it's broken, but you feel trapped that you have to stay. And it's not simple that you can just explain it within one sentence, one paragraph, maybe even one day. There's a lot that goes behind all of that.
So, what do you think needs to change in the system in order to protect and help domestic abuse survivors?
Well, I think to start with, the people in authority, like courts, like the police, they need to believe the victim, or they need to do more to help the victim, not just by handing out nice words, oh, they're there, I'm sorry. They actually need to provide some sort of real help by actually talking to the perpetrator, by actually pulling them up, making them see that what they're doing is wrong, not just by arrest, maybe even by education, I'm not sure, but somewhere something has to change, because so many women are stuck because of the fact that they feel like nobody actually believes them. And I'm actually coming from the point of view, because I've been in that situation where I've told the police and they haven't done anything, or they appear to do nothing, or they tell you to call them on a blue light system. But what point is there of the blue light system if by that time you've already been battered and bruised and the person's walked out, and the police just say, well, don't worry about it, if he comes back then we'll discuss it then?
What do you think kept you in that situation? If you want to answer.
Mostly my children, because I didn't want them to grow up without a father. I didn't want to feel like a failure, like I couldn't give them the basic needs. Like every child deserves to have a mother and a father, and I felt guilty because I was the person that found that father for them, and I chose wrong. Another thing was community, that they will say that I got married in a way that was frowned upon, by marrying out of my culture, by marrying out of my religion. People would have said that, oh, I told you so. And I wanted to show them that all human beings are not the same, and some people can be good. But obviously in my situation, it didn't work out that way. But I tried my best, because I grew up in a broken home. Broken is in the fact that my parents stayed together, but I witnessed a lot of domestic violence, a lot of verbal abuse, a lot of abuse. And I didn't want my children to see that, so I tried to cover it up as much as I could to try and protect them. But in the end, by hurting me, I was hurting them.
So, do you think you have any words of wisdom and hope for those who are going through that right now?
I think sometimes we find courage and support in places that we don't expect. So speak to your friends, speak to your family. Don't leave it till the last minute. Don't leave it to the point where you think that there's no return. Oftentimes people know something's happening, but they're just waiting for you to tell them, because when it's in like a relationship, they don't feel like they want to look like they're being nosy, or like they're trying to, get involved in your marital problems, but if you say something, I can guarantee that there will be people out there that do believe you, that don't think you're a liar, and that do realise that you need help. And it's not even just the actual physical help, just sometimes somebody saying yes, they believe you is enough for you to get the courage to stand up and to walk away. Because for me, I feel like my children are better off out of that situation, even though they haven't got their dad with them at the moment. The door is always open if he wants to see his children, but they don't have to be in that situation where they have to witness stuff that no child should ever have to witness.
When the first lockdown was lifted in 2020, there was a massive increase in women seeking accommodations for them to escape their violent and abusive relationships, whether it was marital or otherwise. If anyone is in need of help, please call the number on the screen.